So hello and welcome to Vermont Interfaith Action's Conversations with Candidates 2020. Vermont Interfaith Action is a faith-based grassroots community organizing project made up of 59 member and affiliated congregations throughout the state of Vermont. We work together as a coalition including Protestant, Catholic, Jewish, Unitarian Universalist, Buddhist, and Muslim traditions. Our goal is to effect systemic change around issues that are identified at the grassroots level, issues that affect the families and the individuals who attend our congregations and whom we reach out to in our communities. In years past, VIA has hosted events across the state in order to hear from candidates about the issues VIA leaders and clergy are concerned about. This year, we have invited the gubernatorial candidates to fill out questionnaires and join us for 20-minute conversations about their answers. Today, I am joined by Mr. John Klar of Brookfield, Vermont. So John, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Very good. Well, we'll get started with our first question. Many of our faith traditions are concerned with how we treat vulnerable populations in our state. For instance, those with pre-existing conditions and those who have historically and continue to be discriminated against. How will you model respect for vulnerable populations here in Vermont?
Well, hopefully we model respect by emulating the example of Jesus Christ. I am a Christian. In fact, it may interest some of your members to know that I started a church in Westfield, Vermont with my wife, where I became pastor for about 3 years. My sole motivation was to raise money for a Ugandan orphanage that we have supported now for over 5 years in an ecumenical effort, which has included people from many faith traditions. And I have worked with the Catholic Church and a lot of secular sources as well. And this is to bring attention to the suffering of people in Uganda. But I have had a history of trying to model that compassion that we are commissioned to model. That's part of the Great Commission, walking the walk instead of talking the talk. I actually have a pre-existing condition. I have struggled with fibromyalgia now for 25 years. It totally destroyed me and brought me to my faith. I have worked pro bono as a public defender in family court for gay and transgender people. Throughout my life, I have tried to model those principles that we're talking about right here. And we need it more than ever in Vermont and in our country. So I don't plan on changing my opinion about that matter. Jesus demonstrated that we need to have compassion for the sick, for the poor, for people of other races. We actually have to be nice to rich people too, which sometimes I have been guilty of that prejudice. We are all sinners. So the model is there, and Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So that is my standard, and I will continue to carry that standard, even though I'm imperfect and may struggle. But I find that I've got a pretty good guide there.
Very good. Well, thank you for that response. Another big concern during this time is, of course, our economy. Given the current uncertainties of when and if Vermonters who have lost their jobs will ever gain them back, what creative and innovative ideas do you have to help with the job creation that doesn't further the income inequality gap that we see in our state?
Well, I think you just hit on my favorite question of your list, so thank you. It's a very serious matter, and the COVID situation has highlighted the situation here in Vermont and our economic problems. And I should emphasize that I also, as an attorney, I spent 3 years as a tax attorney, and I have a background in economics and accounting. And the problems that we're facing now in Vermont are economic problems. We still need to have a thriving economy in order to have the money for things like cleaning up the environment and helping alleviate the suffering of others. And so on my website at clark2020.com, in the top right, is the 2020 Vermont Farming Manifesto. It's available in a 14-page summary in the full form, and there's a short video, and there's a 2-page summary. But in sum, it is designed to stimulate Vermont's economy by supporting our farmers and small businesses and help reverse the decline that we've seen in those areas in the last 50 years or so, and pare down government expenditures that are wasteful or that we can spare, and there are some, and to help people thrive and build businesses, and particularly to export food out of this state. We are the number one locavore state in the country. We're 49th in business development. So there is a lot of inequality being generated in Vermont because of a wealth transfer from people who aren't making a lot of money to the government. And I have demonstrated this using the state of Vermont's actual numbers. And from 2014 to 17, state salaries increased almost 15%, while the median income of Vermonters increased less than 4% over that same time period. And that includes the state salaries. So that's a wealth transfer from taxpayers to a bureaucracy, which may be well-intentioned, but is inefficient and is a service provider. In order to grow an economy, you need to produce goods. You can't support your bureaucracy if you don't have underlying and continued economic growth in order to pay those bills. It is a service. So we've got a little out of balance on that. And COVID has demonstrated, too, that we can't just go back to the rich people and hit the pockets through an income tax. Art Wolf is an economist who wrote about this recently. The money's not there. They lost money, too, and some of them are fleeing the state. So we need to start looking more at helping increase efficiencies in government and allocate our resources through government in places where they're most effective, and help people run their businesses, help people, particularly farming. You know, that is also the foundation of our other businesses and of our tourism in Vermont and our culture and our heritage and our future. And the more local healthy food we have, it'll also improve our healthcare costs and our healthcare outcomes, instead of getting food from far away that's tainted from not being fresh or from preservatives or other things from being industrial food and contributing to environmental degradation. That's our plan, summarized at our website, clar2020.com. And we're the only ones with an economic plan, by the way. I'm not aware of anybody else with a comprehensive plan, especially one of that degree of specificity.
Thank you. One of the things that we know as well, though, is that transportation can be an influencing factor on someone's job prospects here in Vermont, and it has also an impact, of course, on our environment. So what are your two top transportation priorities for the state of Vermont?
Fix roads, fix roads, fix roads. Our legislature has repeatedly diverted money away that had been allocated for road construction and used it in other areas, and we can't afford to do that anymore. That causes other ancillary damage in lost business for damage to vehicles, slow down time, lost hours. So the number one issue is to help Vermont's roads. We have a particularly rough climate on our roads, so they do need a lot of maintenance relative to other areas. Another area that I think we really should look at is reducing the fickle and overwhelming regulations that apply to vehicle inspections. And I know that they're well-intentioned, but those laws often are counterproductive for the environment, because when we take vehicles off the road prematurely because of a small defect, we are taking a vehicle off that consumed hundreds and hundreds of barrels of oil to produce that hard asset. It's not just the fuel that goes in the tank, it's the fuel that went in the construction of that vehicle, and the rubber and the electric components and all of the different materials that are there. We should get as many miles as we can out of those vehicles. But guess what? Those are the vehicles that poor Vermonters drive. You know, I'm driving a $1,500 Jeep, and my truck before that I bought for $600, and I drove it for 2 years. And often I'm taking these vehicles off the road when they are perfectly functional because they have a rust spot or they need some other issue that is not likely to be a huge risk to people, as far as, I don't see people dying from a rust hole. So it's well-intentioned, but often it compels us to buy newer vehicles when we could still get mileage out of our old. And again, well-intentioned policies. The EV car policy transfers wealth from poor people so that rich people can buy expensive cars in the name of the environment. The net metering program to help produce more solar power, well, it charges people on fixed incomes and lower income people a higher rate for electricity, and that money is then transferred to the pockets of people who are wealthy enough to afford subsidized solar panels. These might be well-intentioned, but they're actually often, and this is what we learn in tax, oftentimes counterproductive to the stated goal. And so when we figure these stuff out, then we adjust and we reanalyze. We need to fix our roads, and we need to help people who are lower income keep driving their cars and not compel them into a higher and higher vehicle cost.
Thank you very much. You did say fix roads, fix roads, fix roads, which was 3. I was only asking for 2, but I'm going to let you get away with that one. So.
Oh, did I? Okay, I thought I reaffirmed the 2 and I went off. Okay, thank you.
Did. I'm just teasing.
I'm a lawyer. Lawyers do that, so that's fine. Thank you.
So we do have a final question for you, Mr. Klar, and that's around education as well. So what would be your 2 top priorities in making education both more accessible and more inclusive for our students? How do we ensure educational equity when some students have access to high-speed internet, but other students do not?
Well, and I take that word more inclusive to mean that, hopefully we're trying to include everyone. That surely is the goal. One is certainly, as the question indicates, improving internet access. And in Vermont, that's particularly challenging, as we found today with this video effort. It may continue to have an imbalanced approach. And, that's a trade-off. Some people want to live way out in the boonies, and they forego education, or they forego good internet access. But I think that for Vermont's intractable, it's very visible to us, well-established problems with our school systems as far as affordability, that internet access is a key component in the future, and that more and more students may learn in part or in full remotely. It also will help the environment if they do so, cutting down on commuting costs. But then, true, it can be alienating. So these are difficult things to balance. It's also not a one-size-fits-all situation. Act 46 needs to be reassessed. It was proposed to decrease costs and preserve local control, and it's proven that it's done neither. I think we need to return more local control to schools and maybe look at some of those more historic models, smaller schools that could function. We have proficiency-based learning. Maybe we need to integrate more school grades. Another big thing that we're looking at is an income-sensitive subsidization, so that people who wish to go to more beneficial institutions will have the support to meet their specific circumstances, because it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all. Burlington is a very different education experience from the Northeast Kingdom or some other parts of our state. So that's how we're trying to look at a rather complex solution to a very complex problem.
Well, thank you. That does take care of the questions that we have for you, but we do have a few minutes left, so I'd like to invite you, if you have other thoughts and ideas that you'd like to present to the people who will be viewing this video, please feel free right now.
Well, thank you. What we've done, which is a little unusual, we hope people are seeing, is we've tried to organize a number of people around these central policies of the economy, the school system, and our opioid crisis. I'm a certified opioid recovery coach. These things are all integrated. They're all very complex. They all require humility as we approach them, and they're all related to the economy. But they also then look to fiscal conservatism as a potential solution, and we suggest that it could be tried. If we could bring Vermonters together to focus on these 3 issues instead of red or blue, black or white, rich or poor, we could perhaps duck our head down from the winds that are of turmoil that are ripping our nation apart. When Donald Trump is no longer president, Vermont will still have all of these problems. And likewise, whoever is governor, we're all going to have these problems. So instead of having more infighting, we're actually trying to approach people with sort of a truce and say, look, let's focus on these issues. And that's what's on our website. That's what the economic plan is on the website, klar2020.com. I really hope people will look at it, and we can fine-tune the ideas. It's certainly not set in stone. I'm trying to set some goals and ideas and have a conversation about how we can help our farms instead of just talking about it, help our economy and our poor people instead of just talking about it. And we're having a great conversation doing that. So I'm looking forward to being a continued part of that conversation. I hope people will look at those details and tell me what we can do better, because we're still a work in progress. All of us are. And I'm grateful for what you folks are doing and for having me on today. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your time today and your good thoughts and ideas. So all the best to you in your campaign efforts. And to those who are listening today, I want to remind you that the primary is going to be on Tuesday, August 11th. You can request a mail-in ballot today, however, if you haven't already done so, from the Secretary of State's website or by calling your local town clerk's office as well. So thank you on behalf of Vermont Interfaith Action. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you again, Mr. Klar, for your participation.
Thank you very much. God bless you all.